So, welcome to this week's edition of the Engineering Ignition podcast with myself, Scott Buchanan. And thank you for taking the time to tune in, and I do hope you enjoyed today's show. As part of our Experts and Leaders Engineering podcast series, we have had some insightful conversations around successful businesses and individuals within them, and some very impressive ideas over the course. Today is no different, and I'm delighted to be joined online with Bob Windmill, whose chemical and process career has taken him in different directions throughout his tenure, from superbikes all the way to water, and as an academic director at the moment. I do think sometimes engineers feel constrained by what they can achieve, and I'm looking forward to learning about Bob's insight as to what his experiences and learning curve has been for the water industry and where the future lies and Bob's future lies also. So without further ado, Bob is presently the academic director at British Water Engineering College, and I'm delighted to welcome him to the show just now. How are you getting on this week, Bob?
Very well, thank you, Scott. And yourself?
I'm not too bad, not too bad. It is sunny in Scotland today, so yes, we're just getting the everything spruced up for the summer.
Okay, so shall we get the show on the road?
I think that's a good idea. So what is, for people that don't know of you, Bob, I mean, I've been learning about you since we've been talking, but I mean, can you give a background of where you're coming from? What's your background? How does one become an academic director?
Well, first of all, Scott, I'm probably as surprised as anyone where I've ended up in my career. My background is in the water industry and water treatment, which is pretty solid process science. And I started many years ago with Anglian Water as a very junior trainee laboratory technician. And if somebody had told me then what I would be doing today, I would have suggested they get their bumps felt. I just had no idea that I could have a career like that. If I could have, my height of my ambition was, let's get the next grade up and try and get this training position turned into a permanent one. So that was where I started. And I arrived as this cocky, bright, just out of school student. I won the school chemistry prize 3 years on the trot. I played football for the first 11. How could work be anything other than welcoming? And rapidly learned that work and school are two different things. You know, first of all, pink jeans and flowery shirts. No, thank you. Okay, got that one. And here is the washing up. Please don't break anything. Yeah. Bit of a come down. Okay, what I didn't know is it was actually part of the training system. You start, you do the basics, you learn to do them well, and you build on it. So over time, when I was washing up, my colleagues would come by and tell me about various bits of equipment. Okay, just putting little building blocks in place. Then I got to watch them doing stuff, doing it for myself, being left to do it on my own, building my knowledge, being sent out to various treatment works to learn how they worked in reality. All those good kind of things. And over time, I learnt to build on those. The first big lesson I learned was, look, be great at your day job, be great at the basics. Don't settle for good, and then try and add something extra to it. So when I was working in a clean water lab, I made a point of learning about wastewater. So when the laboratories were amalgamated, I could hit the ground running. That worked. It was a principle of a building block that said, be great at the basics, add something, then try and move on. So worked my way up the laboratory service greasy pole, eventually ended up in charge of analytical quality control, which is as mind-numbingly pedantic a trade as you could ever possibly hope for. And if I never have to do it again, it will be too soon. Okay, but it was something I was really good at that other people couldn't do. And one of the key points I've found over the years is if you stand out in your current job, it helps you get your next job fairly well, regardless of what it is, because the number of sideways jumps I've made are amazing. So, eventually got this AQC job, figured I've had enough of this. Going to be a technical expert at the top of a very small pile. And I just figured I wanted to be a decision maker, not just somebody who followed the recipe and told people what to do and where they were going, where they were going wrong. So the opportunity came along indirectly that Anglian Water decided it was going to launch a commercial laboratory offering. And I stuck my hand up to say, look, I'll take this and run with it. I hadn't got the faintest idea how to do it or what it would be like, but it meant I got loads of experience of speaking to end user customers. I learned about pricing products, stuff like that, which you would never have got as a mainstream analyst. Still had to do the AQC job alongside this, but hey ho, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And it was successful. Then Anglian Water had one of its regular reorganizations, and they created this wonderful job called a field scientist. And it was about looking after drinking water quality in the distribution network. Previously, all the scientists did was made sure that the treatment works were running properly, and that was it. Then the rules changed, and the point of measure stopped being what left the treatment works and became what arrived at the customer's taps. And surprise, surprise, all of a sudden you've got to figure out what can go wrong between a treatment works and a customer's tap. Nobody knew how to do this. So we just had to make it up as we go along is a bit strong, but we found by doing what worked and what didn't work. And that was quite successful. I was one of 6 people doing this. We met regularly. We kicked ideas around. We developed the new way of doing things. But alongside this, the area I was in, they had some big commercial customers. People like Core Tools, the big dyeing consortium, a couple of power stations, 2 oil refineries that had very, very specific water quality requirements. And of course, they were looking for somebody to go and speak to these people who could actually understand the technicalities of what they're saying, and I lost the vote. Yeah, and actually I stuck my hand up because I thought, well, the worst they can do is shout at me. But it was a fascinating experience when they said, oh, we've got boilers, and you suddenly find you're standing alongside something the size of a small block of flats. There's 9 of them in a row. And they explain to you how if our water quality goes wrong, their boilers go bang, and there's a crater half a mile wide where there used to be this chemical factory. No pressure there.
Yeah.
But, you listen, you learn, you make sure you can take these messages back to my area manager to say, look, you need to take this more seriously, and here's why. And it was there I learned, I suppose, the art of effective speaking. And I was struggling to get him to understand. I said, well, look, do you fancy turning Core Tools into a crater half a mile wide on your watch? Because that's essentially what we're risking here. And surprise, surprise, it got his attention. Took him up there, stood him beside these boilers, and he understood.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about communicating upwards. But I was still quite a technical person at this.
Yeah. And Bob, sorry for cutting over here, but I'm thinking here to our listeners when the topic that we're looking at is from techie superbike racer to academic director. No, I'm just in between the lines here that there's a key piece of this jigsaw. I reckon that you're hiding from us all. I mean, and I think what we were trying to suss out is why where you are doesn't necessarily define where you can get to. So where did the bikes come in, and was it really a proper superbike?
Okay, right. Yes, guilty as charged, hiding it. In the early days in the lab, it was pretty routine stuff, and I needed a hobby, and I always rode large capacity road bikes because that's what I fancied. Went off to Snetterton one day to act as a track marshal, watched these people going round and thought, I'm sure I could do better than that. So bit the bullet, entered my road, did my road bike up a bit, entered it in a race, and found, surprisingly, yes, I could do better than that. So all of a sudden, in addition to everything else, I was a part-time superbike racer. Are they a superbike? Produce 150 horsepower, will top out 175 miles an hour, fairly super.
Yeah.
Now, because of my means, I couldn't afford the latest whiz-bang full-house superbike, so I entered a class called production, which is for much more standard machines. But you could also enter one of those in the full superbike race. What I discovered is if you concentrated on getting the basics right, my relatively modest production superbike could live with the full house racing superbikes most of the time. So I learned a very valuable lesson that if you concentrate on the basics, get it right, practice hard, you can get 90% of what you want for 20% of the F, for 20% of the cost. And it was literally, I had a £10,000 superbike, they were racing £50,000 superbikes. And most of the time I could, in a field of 40, I could probably finish second, third, fourth.
Wow.
So that valuable lesson. You also learn a lot about planning. My thing was about, I want to win championships, not individual races. So learning, don't chase, if somebody's having a better day than you and going faster, it may be wise just to let them go. Pick your battles. Just over the season, I need to score more points than them. The big advantage I had this relatively standard superbike, which didn't break down, whereas all the highly tuned ones were forever going pop.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just figured, okay, they're fast today, let them go, come second or third, rack up the points, wait for them to go bang. So, picking your battles was an important thing. I discovered, to my surprise, I had a ruthlessly competitive streak when the chips were down. Because occasionally you'd end up in a situation where there's two of you, whoever wins the final race or whoever beats the other in the final race of the season takes the championship. And then it was just a question of, are you prepared to do what it takes to get there? And I was. I remember on my production superbike racing against a full house highly tuned equivalent and desperately trying to find a way past them because they would scream off down the straight and I would have to try and claw it back round the corners. I eventually managed to get in their draft down the back straight and launched what I think is technically known as a headless chicken braking effort around the outside. Don't know where it came from, but I just remember sort of looking across, looking at his foot alongside my head, thinking this could hurt. But it stuck, did a block pass into the next corner, and I was off and running. I had no idea I would do that.
Yeah.
But so occasionally you can.
So sorry for kind of that's clearly in you then. I mean, that's been brought out because of the bike, hasn't it? That's brought out because of your competitive natural ability. And do you think that ties in well to where, if you look at your career and where you are now, And I guess what you were touching on earlier about, which we're going to lead on to, I guess, the future, what you're trying to achieve as well. Do you think that's a main driving force behind it, or is that just an add-on?
It's absolutely critical. Having that competitive streak that I want certain things, I'm going to get them. So if it means moving, in one instance, from the very nice cathedral town of Norwich to the, with no disrespect, not quite so nice fishing port of Grimsby to get a better job, I will do it. If it means going on to an IT secondment for a year and driving down to Cambridge at stupid o'clock in the morning, spending all week working down there and then driving back in order to broaden my skill set, I did it. And it's just, I think, a different side of that coin that says, will I make that desperate effort into the last corner? And will I do the hard yards of being apart from my family in order to get the experience that I need? And the answer to both was, yes, I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess going forward then, so you're at that piece now, so you are in a position where you've accomplished plenty, and I guess, I'm sure if anyone wants to learn more, we can do that as well. But I mean, I'm keen to learn more about, from a business perspective, what you are, I guess, whether it's the key challenges or the key learning pieces that you've encountered. I mean, what would you highlight?
Okay. You have to have a direction of travel for yourself. And in my case, early on, it was, I want to be a decision maker. And then as I got that, I wanted to be a higher level decision maker. So every action I took had to line up with, how will it help me get there? I was never particularly motivated by money in itself, but I always figured that if I did the right things and got on, the money would follow. Mm-hmm. It did, and it was very nice to have. I've tried being well off, I've tried being poor. Being well off is better. Poor. At one stage, my wife and I had 19 pence in cash between us and owed loads of money. Ouch. Didn't like that. So we just stopped going out for 2 years, stopped having holidays for 5 until we were back on our feet. We did the hard yards that we had to. Now we want to go out, we want to travel. There's none of this economy class lark because we've done the hard yards. So I think the second one is, do the hard yards early on because it will pay you back. So the direction of travel thing continues. Now it's much more about me helping other people to help themselves, and particularly help people build the careers that they want to have. So my thing is, look, here's some of the things I did. These are the ones that worked, but more importantly, these are the ones that didn't. Make your own decision which you're going to pick. Mm-hmm. You might try one of my failures and make it work for you, but my 50 pence says you're better off trying the things that did work. And I ended up in this position kind of by chance, in that after Anglian Water, did some project work on the Isle of Man, noticed linked to racing motorbikes, had a job that said, Bob, you have to watch the TT, you're obliged by your job to watch the TT each year. Oh dear, what a pity, never mind. So I learned there about the world of contracting, another string to the bow. Came back, got a job with the Sector Skills Council, learned about skills and skills development, skill shortages. It's there where I first came across the ageing workforce in the utility sector, which is now starting to seriously bite.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I'm part of the problem. I'm of an age where I should be retiring, but I can't quite bring myself to do it. I'm just having too much fun. Been offered this role of academic director in the British Water Engineering College, and the thing that really attracted me to it was, it wasn't about the technical learning, was about helping people build careers within the water industry, taking them from various backgrounds, helping them understand the technical stuff they need to have, but also the softer management skills. Because the people to get on, what I have found, you need a mixture of both. You need a good, solid technical background. Be great at something. Never stop learning. I learned about water treatment, science. I then learned about water treatment. I then learned about managing water in distribution. Went off on the IT project, learned about thick and thin clients and why you shouldn't mix them. And even though we did, crazy. Got my project management chitty while I was on that. Came back, got the dream job of my choice, got the top treatment job, arguably in Anglian, and just had that feeling that this could be as good as it's going to get in the water industry. So that was when I went off contracting on the Isle of Man, because I think it was as simple as I worked in the north end of Anglian water. All the good jobs went to people who worked in the centre. So, but whatever, I couldn't get the kind of jobs I was looking for, so I left. Coming back to this competitive streak, if you can't give me what I want, I will go and look elsewhere for it. And I'm not too worried about what it is. So it was a bit of a diagonal leap, not a total sidestep, but I ended up helping them replace 5 old treatment works with 2 new ones. And I had the dual role of the water production manager and the senior client. So all of a sudden, the stuff I learned on the IT project, my Prince 2, managing risk, that kind of stuff, dead useful. So that building block I put in 3 or 4 years before suddenly became useful because I could talk their language, which was nice.